Hey, greetings everybody, it's GleeCon here again with another episode of Lore of Warcraft. On our last episode, we um, looked at the Moonglade in the World of Warcraft Dungeons and Dragons role-playing game setting. We've also just wrapped up the Molten Core, which is the first real raid and game content for Classic, looking at that in Chronicles. So we're getting really, really close. We do still need to finish up Cycle of Hatred and a couple odds and ends here. So stay a while and listen to Chapter 18 of Cycle of Hatred. On our last episode, we found out that the Burning Blade had infiltrated Thrall's highest advisors as well. And again, as a reminder, I apologize. My camera is dying. It will probably only last a minute or so, if that. But there will be a new one on the way. There is. So in the next couple of days, the camera should be back in order. Lorena's chest pounded and she had trouble breathing. Her plate mail felt as if it were constricting her. There goes the camera, sorry. Gave us one sentence. But Lady Proudmoore and her friend named Aegwyn, apparently, and whoever she was, the lady looked on her with more respect and awe than Lorena had ever seen her display before, were able to step through the demonic wards that kept them trapped. Apparently, they had to use Lorena's body on the other side of the wards to disrupt them. The colonel didn't understand any of it. Talk of magic usually just gave her a headache. All she cared about was whether or not it worked. When the lady cast a spell, it almost always did. Lady Proudmoore then turned to the older woman. Magna, I have a request. Oh? Would you object to sharing your space with some thunder lizards? I can cast wards that will keep your house, your garden, and your wells safe, and the highlands will keep them contained. She quickly explained the situation with the thunder lizards. At that, the woman laughed. I have no objection whatsoever. I had a thunder lizard as a pet once. Lorena's jaw fell open. Please tell me you're joking. Not at all. It was shortly after my 400th birthday. After so long, the loneliness got rather overwhelming, so I decided to have a pet. I viewed domesticating a Kodo as a challenge. I named him Scavel, after my mentor. Kodo? Lorena asked with a frown. Aegwyn shrugged. It's what we called them then. In any event, I've always had a fondness for those beasts, and I'm more than happy to share my home with them. They still call them Kodos. There's a difference between a Kodo and a thunder lizard, but I guess maybe not that much of a difference. Thank you, Magna, Lady Proudmoore then returned to Lorena. Give me a few minutes to complete the task that took me to Duratal in the first place, and then we will return to Theramore. I'll teleport the three of us. Instruct your soldiers to return to Theramore immediately via the airship. She smiled wryly. I'm afraid teleporting the entirety of the airship after bringing the thunder lizards here will tax me beyond my capacity to be useful. Very good, milady, Lorena said with a nod. Thank you, Colonel. The lady said the words with a heartfelt smile, and Lorena felt a rush of pride. The colonel had taken a huge risk coming here, trusting Boraven's abilities to find Lady Proudmoore in Orc country, and hoping that the lady would not be angered at her presumptuousness. But it seemed she had been right to trust her instincts, and on top of that, she had been instrumental in freeing the lady and her friend from their prison. While Lady Proudmoore closed her eyes and concentrated on her spellcasting, Lorena looked at the old woman. You're really 400 years old. Over 800. Lorena nodded. Ah, she blinked twice. You've aged rather well. Aegwyn smirked. You should have seen me 30 years ago. Deciding that this conversation was getting far too bizarre to suit her, Lorena instead went to the rope ladder to give Major Beck and the others their new instructions. Beck acknowledged the order, wished her the best of luck, and prepared the dirigible for its return trip. When she came back down the ladder, Lady Proudmoore had finished. As soon as Lorena had stepped off the bottom rung, Beck ordered the ladder pulled back up and the airship began its journey back southward. The Chamberlain's been spending most of his time in the throne room. Lorena found herself unable to keep the disdain out of her voice, then wondered why she even tried. And most of that's been on your throne. Lady Proudmoore nodded. Christoph always emphasized the importance of sitting on the throne. A little too much, if you ask me, Lorena shouted and nodded. In any event, I am ready. Lorena braced herself. She'd been teleported only once, back during the war, and it had made her sick to her stomach. Sure enough, the world turned upside down and inside out, and Lorena felt as if her head had been removed and placed between her knees, while her feet were sticking up out of her neck. A second later, the world normalized, and Lorena heaved. Dimly, as she bent over on the stone floor, she registered that this was Lady Proudmoore's throne room, and Doree was going to scream at her for retching all over the floor. Lady, that was Kristoff's voice, you're back! And with Colonel Lorena. We were afraid you'd been taken by the burning blade. You'll be happy to know that we've reinforced Northwatch, which is good, as Orc and Troll troops are headed there by land and by sea. And who is this? Lorena heaved once again, her stomach clenching so badly it made being the conduit for the lady's spell seem heavenly by comparison. My name is Aegwyn. Really? Kristoff sounded surprised, as if he knew who Aegwyn was. Lorena herself still had no idea beyond the fact that she was a very old woman. Yes. And while I'm no longer truly a Tirsfallen, I still know the stink of demon kind when I smell it, and it's all over you. Though there was nothing left in her stomach, Lorena heaved again, wondering what a Tirsfallen was. What are you talking about? Please, Kristoff, the lady said. Oh, please, Kristoff, tell me that Aegwyn is mistaken. Please tell me that you have not consulted with Smodlaw and the Burning Blade. Milady, it isn't what you think. Her stomach having finished torturing her, Lorena was finally able to stand upright. She saw a rather interesting tableau. Kristoff stood in front of the throne, looking frightened. Aegwyn looked mildly peeved, which wasn't qualitatively different from how she'd looked since Lorena met her. But in Lady Proudmoore, she saw something new. A cold fury. A storm seemed to be gathering behind her eyes, and Lorena found herself very grateful that the lady was on her side. Not what I think. What is it exactly, Kristoff, that I should think? The orcs must be eliminated, milady. Smodlaw has the same goal, and he is a minor demon. I have already put into place the sequence of events that will banish him from the world altogether when we are done. Done? Done with what? Tell me what it is you've set in motion, Kristoff. A chain of events that will drive the orcs from this world forever. It is for the best, milady. They do not belong in this world, and... You idiot! Kristoff reacted as if he'd been slapped. Lorena was no less surprised than the Chamberlain. In all the time she'd served under her, the colonel had never heard Lady Proudmoore speak with such vehement anger. Smodlaw is a demon. Do you truly believe that you'll be able to stop him? She pointed at the old woman. This is Aegwyn, the greatest of the Guardians. Aegwyn snorted at that, but both the lady and Kristoff ignored her. She was unable to completely defeat Smodlaw at the height of her power. What makes you think you'll fare better? And even if you could, no goal is worth risking an alliance with a demon. Their only purpose is to create havoc and desolation. Or was the destruction of Lordaeron not enough for you? Must Kalimdor follow in its wake once this war you seem bent on starting at Northwatch breaks out? Besides, Aegwyn said, even if you had the means to destroy or banish Smodlaw, you couldn't do it. You're in his thrall. That's absurd. Kristoff sounded even more nervous now. Ours is simply an alliance of convenience, and once the orcs are gone... The orcs are our allies, Kristoff! Lightning seemed to crackle around her golden hair, and a small breeze seemed to materialize at her ankles, billowing the lady's white cloak. That alliance was forged in blood, and the demons are the enemies of everything that lives. How could you betray us? Betray me like that? Kristoff was sweating profusely now. I swear to you, milady, it is not a betrayal. I was simply doing what was best for Theramore. The Burning Blade is simply a cult of warlocks under Smodlaw's direction that are bringing out the natural hostility toward orcs. They're doing nothing but abetting what's already there. What about the orcs who are members? Lorena asked. What? Kristoff sounded confused. The orcs who attacked me and my troops at Northwatch, they were part of the Burning Blade. And they were orcs. How do they fit in? Kristoff seemed to be at a loss. Lady Proudmoore angrily shook her head. How many, Kristoff? How many will die to provide your perfect orc-free world? Now Kristoff seemed to be on surer ground. Far fewer than if we wait until Thrall dies and the orcs revert to type. This was the only... Enough. Now the breeze kicked into high gear and lightning shot out from the lady's fingertips. Kristoff screamed a second later, clutching his left shoulder. Smoke started to wisp out from it between his fingers. Instinctively, Lorena ran to Kristoff and ripped away the cloth of his shirt. There was a tattoo on his shoulder blade of a sword on fire, identical to the ones Lorena, Strav, Cly, Jalod, and the others saw in the orcs they fought at Northwatch. The tattoo was now burning. A second later, the tattoo was gone, leaving only charred flesh in its wake. Kristoff collapsed to the floor like a sack of suet, his eyes fluttering. In a quiet voice, Egwene said, "Smodlor's gone." "Yes," Lady Proudmoore sounded calmer now, "and my casting that exorcism spell likely alerted him to the fact that we're on to him." "I'm sorry." Lorena knelt down at Kristoff's side. His words were barely a whisper. "Thought what I did, I found free will, but Smodlor controlled everything. So sorry. The light faded from his eyes. All three women stood in silence for several seconds. The sad thing to Lorena was that Kristoff hadn't been a bad person, truly. He had done what he thought best for Theramore. He had been doing his duty. Of course, he had done it in a spectacularly badly, but his heart had been in the right place. That in turn made her feel guilty. There had been times when she wished Kristoff dead, but now that he was dead, she felt sad. She looked at Lady Proudmoore. "We have to get to Northwatch. If we're lucky, the war won't have started yet, and maybe we can get the troops to stand down. You've got to do it in person, though, my lady. Major Davin won't take orders from anyone else." Lady Proudmoore nodded. "You're right. No." This was Egwene. The lady gazed at her coolly. "I beg your pardon." "There's magic afoot here, Lady Proudmoore, and you're the only person in Kalimdor who can stop it. Your erstwhile Chamberlain was right about one thing. Smodlor is a minor demon. He was a sycophant of Sagaris's. He doesn't have the power to influence so many people, or to raise a forest and teleport the trees, if it comes to that. Those warlocks Kristoff mentioned are the source of all this. They're acting in Smodlor's name, probably in exchange for rare scrolls or some other such thing." She shook her head. "Warlocks go after spells like an addict to a poppy plant. It's revolting." "We don't have time to go on a hunt for a group of warlocks," Lorena said. "Those warlocks are the source of all this, Colonel," Egwene said. Lorena looked at Lady Proudmoore. "For all we know, milady, the fighting has already started. If it hasn't, it may at any second. If Kristoff was right about those orc and troll troops heading down, once the fighting starts, it won't matter who or what caused it. There will be bloodshed, and once that line is crossed, the alliance will be permanently sundered." Egwene also regarded the lady. "Time is of the essence. You said yourself that Smodlor knows that you're on to him. We have to strike now before he has a chance to form a strategy against you, and you can't be in two places at once." Then the lady smiled. It was a radiant smile, one that Lorena took as something of a relief after the anger she had displayed toward Kristoff. "I don't need to be in two places at once." She walked to the entryway of her chambers. Lorena and Egwene exchanged confused glances and then followed. When they walked in, they saw Lady Proudmoore rummaging through the scrolls on her desk before finally saying, "Aha!" She turned around and held up a rock that was carved into an intricate shape. Then it started to glow. I guess she's going to send her message. All right. So, we quickly, as we said the last time I read a chapter of this book, they do a good job of just when you underestimate something, they swoop in and kind of surprise you with the character's insight. In this case, the fact that they quickly knew, if not already knew, that Kristoff was being possessed. So probably my guess is something similar is going to happen in the next chapter for the Horde, that they're going to realize what's going on. But we shall see. Hey, I thank everybody so much for watching the script, because you can no longer watch my weird little face there. And for listening. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope you've been enjoying this story, and hope you're as eager as I am to get going on the next phase of lore of Warcraft. This one is in the pipe 5x5.